The more successful you become, the more convinced you are that you don't deserve it. And that voice in your head telling you you're about to be exposed? It's destroying everything you've worked for. I'm your friend from Mindly, where we break down the psychology behind everyday behaviors. And here's what nobody tells you about imposter syndrome. It's not actually about lacking confidence or needing to believe in yourself more. It's your brain's twisted way of protecting you from something it thinks is dangerous. By the end of this video, you're going to understand why the most successful people feel like frauds, why achievement makes it worse instead of better, and what's really happening when you can't accept that you've earned what you have. I'm going to show you the psychological trap that keeps high achievers stuck in constant self-doubt, and trust me, once you see it, you'll never look at your accomplishments the same way again. The fraud you think you are. Let's be real. You've achieved things. Real things. Promotions. Degrees. Recognition. Projects that succeeded. Relationships that chose you. Skills you've developed. But somewhere deep in your mind, there's this voice that says, they don't know the real you. If they knew, they'd realize you're not that smart, not that talented, not that capable. You just got lucky. You fooled them. And eventually, they're going to figure it out. That's imposter syndrome. And here's the kicker. It's not about actual incompetence. It's about the gap between how others see you and how you see yourself. The bigger your success, the wider that gap feels, and the more convinced you become that you're running a con you didn't even mean to start. Psychologically, imposter syndrome is a persistent belief that your success is unearned, that you're not as competent as others think you are, and that you're constantly at risk of being exposed as a fraud. It's not self-doubt. Self-doubt says, I'm not sure I can do this. Imposter syndrome says, I've already done this, everyone thinks I'm good at it, and they're all wrong. Research shows that up to 70% of people experience imposter syndrome at some point. It's not rare. It's not a sign you're actually incompetent. It's a psychological phenomenon that hits hardest when you're succeeding, not failing. The people at the top of their fields? They're often the ones who feel like the biggest frauds. And here's what makes it so insidious. Every achievement that should prove you're competent gets reframed as evidence that you're a good faker. Got promoted? You convinced them you were better than you are. Finished a difficult project? You got lucky. Received praise? They're just being nice. Your brain has become an expert at turning wins into proof that you're running out of time before everyone sees through you. What people with imposter syndrome say. Listen to the language. You'll hear it everywhere once you know what to listen for. I just got lucky. Dismissing skill, effort, and competence as random chance. Anyone could have done this. Refusing to acknowledge that not everyone has your abilities or work ethic. I don't know what I'm doing. Said by someone who clearly does know what they're doing. They're going to figure out I'm a fraud. Living in constant fear of exposure for a crime you didn't commit. I'm not as good as they think I am. Trusting everyone else's perception except the positive ones. It wasn't that hard. Downplaying accomplishments to make them seem less significant. I just worked really hard. As if hard work negates talent or skill. As if effort means you cheated somehow. I was in the right place at the right time. Reducing years of preparation and skill to geographical coincidence. These phrases aren't humility. They're self-sabotage wrapped in modesty. They're a way of beating others to the punch. If you call yourself a fraud first, maybe it'll hurt less when someone else says it. Except nobody else is saying it. Only you are. The story of Daniel. Let me tell you about Daniel. He's a software engineer at a major tech company. Brilliant guy. His code is clean. His solutions are innovative. His team respects him. He's been there 5 years, got promoted twice, leads important projects. But here's what's happening in Daniel's head. He's in a meeting. His manager is asking for input on a technical problem. Daniel has the answer. He's solved this exact problem before. But he doesn't speak up immediately. He waits. He thinks, maybe someone smarter will say it first. Maybe my solution isn't actually good, and I just think it is. Someone else suggests an approach. It's similar to what Daniel was thinking, but not quite as elegant. The manager looks pleased. Daniel stays quiet. Later, when he implements his original solution because the other approach isn't working, people are impressed. Daniel, that's genius. How'd you figure that out? His response? Oh, I just tried a few things. It's not that complicated once you break it down. At home that night, he's lying in bed, mind racing. He got an email earlier about leading a new project, a big one. High visibility, important client. He should be excited. Instead, he's terrified. This is it. This is the project where everyone's going to realize I don't actually know what I'm doing. I've been coasting on luck and other people's work. But this time, there's nowhere to hide. He starts researching, preparing, overworking. Not because the project requires it, because he's trying to compensate for being a fraud. He's spending 3 times longer than necessary on everything because he's convinced that's the only reason he's succeeded so far, outworking his lack of talent. His girlfriend notices he's stressed. Daniel, you're great at your job. They wouldn't keep promoting you if you weren't. He smiles, says thanks, but inside he's thinking, she doesn't see what I see. She doesn't know that I'm barely holding it together. That's imposter syndrome. It's not about lacking skills. Daniel has skills. It's about being unable to internalize success. Every win gets filed under luck or fooled them again instead of I'm actually good at this. How imposter syndrome shows up everywhere. At work, imposter syndrome is everywhere. It's the person who over-prepares for every meeting because they're convinced they'll be exposed if they don't. It's declining opportunities because I'm not ready yet, even though they're more than qualified. It's attributing every success to external factors, timing, help from others, easy tasks, and every failure to internal flaws. I succeeded because of luck. I failed because I'm not good enough. In relationships, it shows up as constant surprise that someone chose you. Why are they with me? What do they see that I don't? Every compliment feels like they're being nice, not honest. Every fight feels like confirmation that you're not enough, and they're about to realize it. You're always waiting for the other shoe to drop, for them to wake up and see what you see when you look in the mirror. With family, it's the successful person who still feels like they're disappointing everyone. They've got the career, the life, the achievements, but they're convinced their family is just being supportive while secretly knowing they're not that impressive. Or it's the opposite, your family thinks you're amazing and you can't understand why. They don't see what my colleagues see. They don't know that I'm barely keeping up. Socially, imposter syndrome makes you feel like you don't belong in the rooms you're in. You're at a professional event, surrounded by people in your field, and you feel like the only one who shouldn't be there. You're having dinner with successful friends, and you're convinced you're the least accomplished person at the table even when the evidence says otherwise. The cost nobody warns you about. Here's what happens when you live with imposter syndrome long-term. You stop taking risks. Why apply for that position if you're not qualified? Never mind that you are qualified, your brain says you're not, so you stay where you are. You turn down opportunities that could change your life because you're convinced you'll fail, you'll be exposed, you'll prove that you're the fraud you always knew you were. You overwork yourself into exhaustion. If you're not actually talented, you have to compensate with effort. So you work twice as hard as everyone else. You don't delegate because I should be able to do this myself if I'm actually good at my job. You say yes to everything because saying no might reveal your limitations. Your relationships suffer because you can't accept love, praise, or recognition. Someone tells you they're proud of you and you deflect. Someone says you're good at something and you correct them. Over time, people stop trying. They stop complimenting you because you always shoot it down. They stop sharing your wins because you minimize them. And then you feel even more like a fraud because nobody's acknowledging you, not realizing you trained them not to. Your mental health tanks. Constant anxiety about being discovered. Stress about every performance review, every presentation, every interaction that might expose you. Depression from feeling like you're living a lie. And the worst part? You can't talk about it because talking about it might reveal that you actually are a fraud. The long-term consequence is that imposter syndrome becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Not because you're actually incompetent, but because you're so busy protecting yourself from exposure that you stop growing. You stop taking the risks that lead to greater success. You stay in your comfort zone because stepping out of it might prove what you fear most, that you're not good enough. Vanessa's breaking point. Let me tell you about Vanessa. She's a therapist. Licensed, experienced, great with clients. People seek her out specifically. Her practice is full. She's helped dozens of people through real trauma, real crisis, real transformation. But she can't shake the feeling that she's faking it. Every session, she's convinced she's about to say something wrong, give bad advice, miss something important. She reads constantly, not because she loves learning, but because she's terrified of not knowing enough. She's got 3 certifications she didn't need, took training in modalities she doesn't even use, all because she needs to prove to herself that she's qualified. One day, a client tells her, "You changed my life. I don't know where I'd be without you." Vanessa's response? "I'm so glad you did the work. You really showed up for yourself." She can't say thank you. She can't accept that she played a role in this person's transformation. That night, she's sitting in her car after work and she breaks down. She's exhausted. She's successful by every metric, but she feels like she's constantly on the verge of collapse. She realizes she's been waiting for someone to tell her she's good enough, but every time someone does, she dismisses it. She's waiting for permission to believe in herself, but she's the one withholding that permission. Here's what she finally understands. She's not an imposter. She's someone who refuses to accept evidence that contradicts the story she's been telling herself. And that story isn't protecting her. It's destroying her. Breaking free from the fraud narrative. So, what do you do with imposter syndrome? First, you need to understand that it's not about getting more competent. You're already competent. It's about changing your relationship with evidence. Start tracking your wins without qualification. When something goes well, write it down. Don't add, "but I got lucky," or "but it wasn't that hard." Just the fact. I completed the project on time. The client was happy. My manager praised my work. No editorializing, just evidence. Challenge your fraud narrative with questions. What would I need to believe I'm competent? If this level of achievement isn't enough, what would be? Often, you'll realize there's no amount of success that would satisfy the imposter voice. That's how you know it's not about achievement. It's about a story you're telling yourself. Share your imposter feelings with people you trust. Not for reassurance, that rarely helps, but for perspective. You'll often find that the people you think have it all figured out feel like frauds too. That doesn't make it true. It makes it a shared human experience. Reframe your achievements accurately. I worked hard and applied my skills to solve this problem. Not luck, not fooling anyone. Work and skill. Those are the real reasons for your success. Accept them. If imposter syndrome is significantly impacting your life, if you're turning down opportunities, burning out from overwork, or experiencing anxiety or depression, talking to a therapist can really help. Imposter syndrome often has roots in childhood messages about worth, achievement, and acceptance. Unpacking those can change everything. The neuroscience of feeling like a fraud. Here's what's happening in your brain when imposter syndrome hits. Your brain has a negativity bias. It's wired to pay more attention to potential threats than positive information. From an evolutionary standpoint, this made sense. The ancestor who remembered the dangerous berry survived. The one who remembered the compliment? Not as useful. But in modern life, this means your brain catalogs every mistake, every awkward moment, every piece of evidence that you might not be as good as people think. Meanwhile, your successes? They barely register. Or when they do register, your brain immediately finds a reason to discount them. There's also something called the Dunning-Kruger effect. People who are incompetent tend to overestimate their abilities. People who are competent tend to underestimate theirs. Why? Because competent people know enough to recognize how much they don't know. Incompetent people don't know enough to realize their limitations. So if you feel like a fraud, there's a good chance you're actually quite competent. You just know enough to see the gaps in your knowledge, and your brain interprets those gaps as proof that you're fooling everyone. From a psychological standpoint, imposter syndrome often develops in people who received conditional acceptance growing up. Love and approval came with achievement. So your brain learned, my worth is tied to my performance. If I'm not performing perfectly, I'm not worthy. Now, as an adult, no amount of achievement feels like enough because the standard is perfection, and perfection is impossible. The real reason this happens. So here's what all of this actually means. Imposter syndrome isn't a sign that you're a fraud. It's a sign that you've internalized a story that your worth is dependent on being flawless, and since you're human and therefore flawed, you must be fooling everyone. And here's the twist nobody wants to hear. Imposter syndrome is actually arrogance in disguise. Not confidence, arrogance. Because what you're actually saying is, I'm so good at fooling people that I've managed to convince everyone I'm competent despite being completely incompetent. Think about how unlikely that is. You're telling yourself you're smarter than everyone around you, smart enough to run an elaborate con for years, but somehow also not smart enough to actually be good at your job. You can't have it both ways. Either you're a master manipulator who's fooling everyone, which would make you incredibly perceptive and strategic, or you're actually competent at what you do and everyone's assessment of you is accurate. The imposter story only works if you believe you're smarter than every single person who's evaluated you positively. The only way forward is to start trusting external evidence over your internal narrative. When people say you're good at something, when you achieve results, when opportunities come to you, that's data. Your feelings are not data. Your feelings are a story your brain tells based on old programming that no longer serves you. You're not an imposter. You're someone who's been discounting their own competence for so long that accepting it feels more dangerous than denying it. But staying small, staying scared, staying convinced you're about to be exposed, that's not protecting you. It's preventing you from becoming everything you're capable of being. And you're capable of a lot more than you think. Myths and truths. Myth 1. Imposter syndrome means you're actually not good enough. Truth. Imposter syndrome almost exclusively affects competent people. Truly incompetent people rarely feel like imposters because they don't know enough to recognize their limitations. Myth 2. More success and achievement will cure imposter syndrome. Truth. Achievement often makes imposter syndrome worse. The more you succeed, the higher the stakes feel, and the more convinced you become that you're about to be exposed. Myth 3. Feeling like a fraud means you should wait until you're more qualified. Truth. You're already qualified. The feeling isn't accurate feedback about your abilities. It's a psychological pattern that needs to be addressed, not evidence that should guide your decisions. Myth 4. If people knew the real you, they'd be disappointed. Truth. People do know the real you. The real you isn't the anxious, self-doubting voice in your head. It's the person who shows up, does the work, and achieves results. That's who they see, and that's who you actually are. Myth 5. Confident people don't experience imposter syndrome. Truth. Confidence and imposter syndrome can coexist. You can be good at what you do, know you're good at it, and still have a voice saying you fooled everyone. It's not logical, it's psychological. Myth 6. Imposter syndrome is just humility. Truth. Humility is recognizing your limitations while accepting your strengths. Imposter syndrome is denying your strengths exist at all. One is healthy, the other is self-sabotage. What this means for you. Look, if you've spent years feeling like a fraud despite evidence to the contrary, I need you to hear this. You're not fooling anyone. You're competent. You've earned what you have. The gap between how others see you and how you see yourself? That's not evidence they're wrong. That's evidence your self-perception is distorted. The next time you achieve something and your brain immediately starts explaining it away, stop. Just for a moment, consider the possibility that you're actually good at what you do. Not perfect, not flawless, not without room to grow, but competent, skilled, worthy of the position you hold and the success you've achieved. Start accepting compliments. Not deflecting them, not minimizing them, not correcting people. Just thank you. That's it. It'll feel weird at first. It'll feel like you're lying. But you're not. You're finally telling the truth. And if you're turning down opportunities because you're convinced you're not ready, ask yourself, will I ever feel ready, or am I waiting for a feeling that's never going to come? Because imposter syndrome doesn't go away when you're finally good enough. You're already good enough. It goes away when you start accepting that you are. Your success isn't a fluke. Your achievements aren't luck. The people who believe in you aren't confused. You're not running a con. You're just being human, doing your best, and succeeding more than you give yourself credit for. And it's time to stop apologizing for that. If this hit home for you, I'd love to have you stick around, hit that subscribe button so we can keep unpacking these patterns together. I'll see you in the next one.